It's another start all over Sunday morning, another chance to get your shit together and get going, to break this trance. Many years have gone by, but you've always hoped that if you keep on trying, you will make it home to the place where you own every second of your time, and you fall asleep full, so content and satisfied. But Wednesday dawns, a day of trial, a test of faith. Question your ability to follow through, to make this change.
I was born in 1960. My parents knew each other, lived across the street from each other. My mother was really young. She was 17 and my father was 21. He just got back from the Marine Corps, and they fooled around and she got pregnant. It was a shotgun wedding, and I was born about 5 months after they got married. I'm the oldest of four. I've got a sister who's 2 years younger, a brother another year younger, and then a youngest sister who's, I think, 6 years younger than me. My father was German-Irish, and my mother was English-Italian, although she really related strongly, I think, with the Italian side of her family. It was, you know, it was a big family, loud, you know, she cooked Italian very well, that kind of stuff. On my father's side, things weren't quite as gregarious, you know, they were quiet, more reserved people, kind of a working class, coal miners, steel mill workers, that type of stuff. My father, first he spent 4 years in the Marine Corps, went to college, then started working in the steel industry, worked his way up into a management position in the steel industry.
Were you brought up with religion?
You know, a little bit, yeah. My mom's side of the family, you know, Roman Catholic, Italian. I even had my first Holy Communion and all that. But I don't think it ever sunk in. I mean, I used to go to catechism and, you know, we did it, but I questioned everything. I married Lisa 26 years ago. We've been together 30 years and we have 5 children.
Hi, I'm Lisa Huey. I was born in 1961 in Downey, California. I was the youngest of my mother's 4 children. Her first marriage was to Bill, and with Bill she had 3 children, Lori, Kathy, and Mark. So she had an affair with my father, and when I was about 2, she divorced her first husband and married my father. Eventually, well, just within a few years, Gene packed up my mom and her 4 kids, and off to Oregon we moved. He was a water manager to farmers in different agricultural places. He got drunker and drunker as the years went by, and more violent and aggressive. And my mom took the brunt of that. She stood up for herself. She did pretty good, but she took more verbal and physical abuse from him than really anybody should have to. And we would find his booze bottles and dump them out and hide them. We played horrible tricks on this alcoholic, and even at times had plotted his death. I know my sisters wanted to at times push his body maybe a little bit closer to the wood stove that he was passed out near. Once she divorced Gene, her dad, who was wealthy and owned a lot of property in Southern California, brought her back into the fold and was also there to help and support her. And that was huge for us.
I was 16 years old when my parents told us they were getting divorced, and my mother was struggling. She became addicted to drugs. We were all, you know, smoking a lot of pot at that age, drinking. I mean, it was, at that point, it was the 70s. And I always managed to have money, and I would help feed my brothers and sisters at times. I would make sure everyone got up and went to school. And there were days when, you know, it didn't feel like we had any parental supervision at all. Of course, my dad at that point was out of our lives mostly.
Did you have jobs? Babysitting?
No, we didn't.
Did you sell drugs? How'd you get the money?
I used to sell drugs. I used to sell a lot of marijuana. You know, back then you could buy an ounce of really crappy weed for like $45, and I remember I got $22.50 and went in with a buddy of mine and bought some, and then built it up to where I was selling a lot. I always had $200-300 of cash in my pocket because of that. I've always been good with money. Yeah.
When did you lose your virginity?
Oh, geez. I lost my virginity at 17. And the girl was 15. Or maybe I was 16 and she was 14. And it was our first time for both of us. And she got pregnant. And she didn't tell me. She didn't tell anybody. At least I never found out until her parents called my parents and said, "Your son got our daughter pregnant and she just had an abortion." And we were just young and dumb and didn't even know what we were doing. I was a typical teenager at that point, trying to get laid every weekend. I think everybody was back then, right? It was the, again, 70s. And I threw a lot of parties in school, in high school. And, you know, as I look back, I think I was looking for acceptance in some ways. But we would have keg parties at least once a week, and probably 2 or 3 times a week. Not a lot of parental supervision. Had, you know, kids from everywhere coming over. I'd have 30, 40, 50 people in the house
what kind
at
of
times.
music was playing during these times? Who were you listening to?
Yeah, so I really liked Black Sabbath, a band called Crack the Sky, Jimi Hendrix. You know, Aerosmith was big. It was a lot of that music. It was right. Metal was still coming out, but it was all rock and roll. Blondie came out at the time, and I just loved Blondie, and I wanted to be Blondie, but I could never tell anyone that. I actually got a job. I was working in Erie at a scrapyard of all places, and it was hard work, but I quickly became a crane operator of all things. And I was there maybe 2-3 years, and I realized everyone who worked at this place for any length of time was missing a finger or something. And it was just like, oh my God, I can't do this. I always knew that I was smart and I could do better. And I started going to night school when I was working in the scrapyard. And that was going to take forever, going to night school. And so I knew I had to go full time. And the only way I could do that was if I could move in with my dad. So then that's when I asked him if I could move out, and I did. I moved out to Bakersfield to go to school.
So we were living in this little podunk town of Porterville. I to this day cannot stand this town. I went to high school there. I went to junior high there. All my high school friends were there. I had lots of sex there. I smoked tons of pot, dropped plenty of acid in that town, and I could not wait to get out. So my way out became the Marine Corps. Getting out of Porterville and joining the Marine Corps was probably the best thing I ever did, even though I was a horrible Marine. But they did teach me discipline. I have an obsession now with time and being on time and respecting people's time. Even though I myself wasn't very good, I was still fairly promiscuous in the Marine Corps. Dated quite a few guys. The drugs had to cut back because, you know, the Marine Corps wouldn't tolerate that. I had a couple girls do my urine tests for me a couple times. But the Marine Corps was a hoot. What can you say? Something like 2,500 men to every female. I mean, that's all the recruiter had to say to me, and I was in. So I went to MP school down in Fort McClellan, Alabama. Later got stationed in Quantico, Virginia, right outside of Washington, D.C., and became a military police officer. Not a very good one, but I became a military police officer. You know, firing range, shot that M16, got qualified with a .45 pistol, wore that uniform. It was a roller coaster ride. It was fun. The best thing about the Marine Corps was that gave me Jesse. That's where I met Jesse's dad, or bio dad. I didn't get the man, but I got the kid. Jeff was also married, and he and his wife were separated at the time that I was seeing him, and I felt really compelled that this was my baby and nobody else's. And so I took my, well, there's probably more to this story. I actually, let me back that up a little bit. I'm in the Marine Corps and I'm getting married to a guy named Tom. Even though we sort of got drunk and went and got married in a pair of overalls, I mean, I never thought of it as, oh, I'm married, but I was married. Tom and I never lived together, or at least we didn't for a long time, and he was shipped out on a North Atlantic tour, probably getting hash out of Amsterdam, which is what most of those Marines on the North Atlantic tour were doing. That's when I met Jeff, Jesse's dad, so here my poor behavior continues. And Tom comes home, Joan, Jeff's wife, comes home, and it feels like, okay, I better make this attempt at this marriage I did, I was in, and I better not break up this other man's marriage. So look at me doing the same thing my parents did to me, and now I've got this little boy married to somebody who's not his dad. And the lies begin to repeat a little bit. So when Jesse was just a few months old, Tom started showing his true colors and got violent in a drunken stupor. And I thought, oh no, we're not doing this. And so I sort of stabbed him with a pair of scissors, just a little bit, and loaded up my baby in the Jeep and went to my girlfriend's house for a couple days. Got in touch with Jeff and said, here's your baby, and by the way, I'm going home. And within days, I had jumped on an airplane and gone home with my little redheaded Marine Corps baby. In a moment of weakness, I started talking to Tom on the phone. And in talking to Tom on the phone, we decided he was going to come to California for 2 weeks. I was lonely. I was struggling as a single mom. He came out, and I should have known the day he came out that he should have just got his ass back on the plane and leave. Tom could not get a job anywhere. He was an ex-Marine, tattoos all up and down his arms. This is 1982, 83, something like that. There's just no jobs for him. So my brother gets him a job driving farm equipment, like baling hay and big tractor equipment, because that's what he was trained to do in the service, is drive big equipment. At this time, I'm doing security work. I'm out of the Marine Corps now, right? What am I going to do? I'm military police. I don't want to be a cop. I'm resisting going that route. So I end up working for department stores, and I'm catching shoplifters. And it's a hoot. It's absolutely fun. It takes me probably about a year to really catch on. But once I figure out what a thief looks like and how to catch them, I get really good at it. And this physical person in me who liked to punch people in the face gets this opportunity, not to punch people in the face, but to chase people down and have that thrill, have that excitement. So I end up arresting hundreds and hundreds of shoplifters between Los Angeles and all up and down California, working for these department stores. I become good at it, and some of the top producers, if you want to call them producers, for the loss prevention departments.
After a year of going to college, I ended up getting a part-time job at the mall, and I was like the security patrol in the parking lot. And Lisa was security, in-store security. She would catch these shoplifters. And so being a fellow security person, you know, we knew each other. And she always came across, looked very confident, almost masculine at the time. And I don't know that I realized it, but that was very appealing to me. We used to hang out as friends. And she would have parties at her house. And I would go over there. And I met her husband at the time. He also had been in the Marine Corps, which was weird. But he was from Pittsburgh. He was born in Pittsburgh. Him and I got along in some regard. And he was a nice guy. You know, he's huge. I was never huge. But he was a nice guy. And so then we hadn't dated yet. I think I invited Lisa to my house for a date. It was a Super Bowl Sunday. And later that week, I saw her again at the mall and I told her that, you know, I can't do this. You're married. It just doesn't work for me.
He leaves a note on my car saying that he can't see me anymore. And this is a Wednesday. He goes, I can't do this. He's not willing to have an affair with a married woman. And my immediate response was, well, fine, then Tom's got to go. And so I went home that day and I told Tom, you got to go. You've got to go. And he did. By Friday, Tom was on an airplane. He had left. That Friday night, Ralph moved in. And I think he spent maybe only one more night at his dad's house, which I think I had a fit about him spending that night. He needed to study for college. Here I was for the first time in my life. I had dated somebody who was smart. He wanted to get an education. He wanted to make money. He wanted to own a home. And I had never dated anybody with goals, with ambitions. I didn't even know how to make goals. My goal in life was to get a goal. I had no goals. So my journey with Ralph begins. I finally get rid of, the husband is gone, and now it's Ralph, myself, and little 3-year-old Jessie. Quickly, we knew we had to get out of Bakersfield, and Ralph convinced me that we needed to pack up and move to Sacramento. He wanted to go to Sac State, where he was going to get his accounting degree, and that's where we needed to be. I was able to get a job transfer. He got a job. My mom pitched in and paid tuition. My mom was fabulous. She absolutely loved him. She saw in him what I saw in him, and they became fairly close. I was getting that biological urge to have another baby, and I really wanted to have Diana. I think it was Ralph's senior year of college, I got pregnant with Diana. 1986, Ralph's getting out of college, and Diana is born all in the same year. Technology. We had bought our first camcorder to record our children, and I got the camcorder out one day to record Diana. I don't even know what I was going to record, and I hit playback at what was last recorded on this lovely new camcorder, and there is Ralph in women's clothes having his own personal little fashion show. Yeah. I was mortified. How could I miss this? How could this be going on and I don't know it? What if this is going on? What else don't I know? I mean, I just felt like I had lost all control. I accused her of molesting the kids. And if I ever find out you've touched the kids, I'm going to kill you. I mean, I am over the top. I don't know what this means. I'm losing my mind.
Well, I was dressing up privately. I had gone through many cycles in my life of acquiring women's clothes and wearing them in private and going through a lot of shame and horror at what I felt at that time was just wrong. And I would purge and get rid of everything and make commitments to myself that I would never do it again, and then I would do it again. And she ran across some of my clothes and confronted me. Yeah, what the hell's going on?
How did you feel when she found them?
Well, it just fit right in with all the shame I'd always felt, right? I was humiliated. How embarrassing.
How did you broach it with Roxanne?
Oh, as probably a very high-strung person that I am, yelling and screaming and what is this, and demanding answers, and not very rationally.
And how did Roxanne respond?
Humiliated and embarrassed. Makes me cry.
And what was your response?
I immediately felt compassion. I felt bad. Sorry. Here this person had this burden. Once I knew what it was, excuse me, and I realized that she was carrying this all by herself. And here we were partners in this relationship for 8 years. We were raising Jessie together. We now had Diana together. And she still didn't feel safe enough in that relationship to share this secret.
Maybe a year later, I had started, gathering up more things, and I had this cute pair of black heels that I would keep in my car, and I would slip them on just driving around. Silly enough, is that what that was? And I remember I used to always turn our tax returns in, as late as possible. So it was April 15th, and I would drive out to the post office with this line of people and turn in our tax return. Of course, I wore, I think, some pantyhose and some heels while I was driving. And I got home, and just as I stopped the car in the driveway, Lisa pulls up. She got out of work a little bit early, and I opened the car door like as she was pulling up, and she saw me, and there it was. I was like, I was wearing women's things again, and I remember just feeling horrible that night. And to be honest with you, I don't remember a whole lot of details other than she was really mad. Here I was again, breaking my promise from before and wearing women's things. And I think what happened is that she decided she needed to get some help. And I don't know why I hadn't thought of that at that point, but she did. And she found a therapist.
I guess all I needed was somebody with some credibility, with some knowledge, to tell me what this was. And she did. And she made it very clear to me that it wasn't going away, that it wouldn't change, and that it would probably progress. And those were the wisest things anybody said to me, because I had to then make my decision. Was I going to stay in this marriage, in this relationship, knowing that this was going to continue, that this wasn't going to stop, or was I going to walk away? And I obviously decided I couldn't walk away, that if this was who she was going to be, if this was who Ralph was going to be, then you weren't going to hide it, and you weren't going to live in shame. So within a week, I was shopping for her, telling her, okay, I want to see. Let's meet this feminine person of you. I want to know who this is. I don't want it to be something that I don't know anything about. So I really almost started immersing myself in what it was.
Openly?
No, it was still very closed, like late at night when the bedroom door was closed. So it wasn't, I was not comfortable with the public by any means, but I was learning about it in private with Roxanne. Now, at the same time, Roxanne was talking to me in a way that she had never spoken to me before. In other words, she was telling me about her childhood. She was telling me about these feelings that she had. She was telling me about her past experiences, the trip to the Steeler game and the other adventures she had had with exploring this feminine side with her, where she had hidden all of this, obviously, from me before. And so now there was this new disclosure, right? And when someone discloses to you, you disclose to them, and you become closer. So in a way, we became incredibly close, but yet it was a protected closeness because we weren't sharing with everybody else. It was like our little secret that nobody else knew about, and it became special. And so I almost fell more in love with her because I think of how she was trusting me now and was disclosing and telling me this stuff that she could never tell me before. And I found that the more I accepted, the more she would tell me. And the more I didn't freak out, the more she would tell me. And the more she would tell me, the more I loved her. The more I accepted her, the more, the closer we grew. And it almost like kind of grew. It was feeding itself, the relationship was. Even though it had a lot more changes to go through yet. About 1992, 93, and I'm feeling like I want another baby. And so I sort of make the deal with Roxanne that she can have her cross-dressing. I just want another baby. And so Rachel was my bargain baby. And I desperately wanted that little girl. So Rachel was born in 1994. And we moved to Walnut Creek when she's just 2 weeks old.
I'd spent a few years in my career, worked my way up a little bit. I got a job offer in San Francisco, and we moved from Sacramento at that point down into the Bay Area. And I met a group in Walnut Creek called the Diablo Valley Girls, who were all cross-dressers, and many of them were married. What I liked about it too is that there were other wives there, and that Lisa had someone she could talk to. I felt like in some ways I was releasing some stuff that I had held, but it was just building for Lisa. And it didn't last that long. It became pretend. It was just another form of pretend.
And I drew a couple lines in the sand, and they all got, washed away with the next wave. Lines such as, no going out in public. No, you can't have a wig. No, you can't have a prosthesis breast. No, you can't have fake. No, I won't go out with you. No, we can't stop and get gas in the car. No, you can't go to work full-time as a girl. No, you can't go shopping and go into that ladies' dressing room. That would be mortifying.
It was late 90s at this point, and we'd lived in Walnut Creek for a year or two, and we started adventuring into the San Francisco. We had Rachel, and then a year later, 2 years later, we had the boys, twins. And so we had the young kids at home, but at this point, our daughter Diana was getting older and Jessie was in high school. The kids would stay home and babysit for us, for the younger ones. We live in a great part of the country. San Francisco's so open. When we were going out, people were, for the most part, accepting. There were a couple of occasions where, guys would not be real thrilled and yell things at you. And I had Lisa by my side, and she protected me. She was always there. I felt safe with her. She and the kids had gone up to Lake Tahoe. We had a cabin up there, and Lisa had just bought me a book called She's Not There, from another woman, Jenny Boylan, who had a similar story. She got married, had kids, was sort of my age, and just said, I can't do this anymore. And for me, I was home alone that week, and I was going to join them the next week. I read this book, and I cried for a week solid. And that was it. That was enough. I knew I couldn't keep pretending. I couldn't do this anymore. It was my moment. It was August of I don't know, it must have been 91, 92, something like that. And I knew what I had to do, and then I had to figure out how. What was that going to mean? That was a huge sacrifice I had to be willing to make. I broke the marriage vows. She didn't marry a woman. She married, me when I was pretending to be a man. I felt like I broke the contract that we had together, and I never wanted a divorce. I've loved Lisa from when I first knew her. I wanted to keep my family together. That was what I tried hard to do. And I knew that I could not stop her from divorcing me if she wanted to. And I knew that to ask her to stay with me was too much to ask of anyone. And that just like I was needing to take care of myself, I wanted her to take care of herself, and I was going to support her in any way I could. If she needed to divorce me, I was going to give her the divorce she needed, and I was going to do everything I could financially to take care of her and the kids. And yet at the same time, I was not going to stop doing what I was going to do. It was really hard. I had this balancing act that I was trying to maintain, and I remember one day we had a tough day. It was hard. I just thought it was over. I thought my life was going to end. And I never cried harder in my life. It was one of those moments where your whole body is crying, not just your tears. And I felt so horrible. And it didn't matter what we were fighting about. Lisa tucked me in bed and let me cry it out. It's her compassion that saved us. It's a long journey. You don't go from, one night waking up next day being a woman. I had the short hair. I had all the stuff that I was supposed to have, being a guy. And then so I started growing my hair out. I started having electrolysis to get rid of the beard. I started getting ready. I hired a voice coach to help me talk because I wanted to pass. I focused on, what kind of woman am I going to be? And not that I knew then, but I knew that I had to figure that out. I had never gone through that. I never had an adolescence, a time of growing as a woman. I kind of had to do that fast. Yeah.
How did your children react?
When we were coming out, the oldest, Jesse, who's now 32, he was in the Marine Corps. I'm trying to think exactly what age he was. He must have been, his early 20s. And I would say Jesse probably had the hardest time being a young man, just becoming a man and trying to deal with all those pressures. Like he told me the other day, he goes, the home I came home to was not the home I left. The girls, who were the middle-aged children, were marvelous. They immediately wanted to meet Roxanne. They wanted Roxanne to start dressing up and being a girl, and they embraced her. They were so loving. And the twins, well, it's like, okay, they just didn't care. I'm not sure. We got them some counseling, but it was really not necessary. They just have been very accepting, and I think they were young enough, early elementary school. If you were to ask them today, I don't know that they even have a memory of my partner, of my wife as their dad. Those memories have all been filled in with the female image of Roxanne. I'll
never forget my boys. I was sitting, they were sitting on my lap, and I was reading a book to them. And at this point, I was wearing women's clothes exclusively at home. And Brycey was on my lap, and Anthony was next to me. I think Rachel was right there too. And I'm reading a book, you know, like you do. And Brycey looks down at my shoes and he says, "Are those girl shoes?" And I said, "No, those are my shoes." Then he looks at my shirt and he goes, "Is that a girl shirt?" I said, "No, that's my shirt." And then he looked at me right in the eyes and he said, "Are you a girl?" And so I explained it to him. I said, "Look, I am a girl. I was born a boy like you, but I'm a girl. Yes, I'm a girl." And guess what? We went on to read the book. When I first started dressing up, I would wear these dresses that were like, you know, buttoned up to here. I was trying to not be too far out there, you know, even though we had this suburban family life going on. So I would put proper little, you know, dresses on together. Heck, there for a while, I think I spent one whole summer going out every Friday night or every other Friday night with Lisa wearing fishnets, high heels, mini skirts, tank tops. You know, I was still wearing a wig at the time, but I would get these long wigs and try and do my hair up. And I got more and more comfortable in my own skin. And I felt more and more comfortable going out in public. And I knew I didn't pass at that point. And I thought that was very important to pass, so I tried. But, you know, it was awkward. But it was a lot of fun going out. And you know, we'd go out dancing till all hours of the night and come home, hopefully before the sun comes up. I was never attracted to gay men or didn't like attraction from gay men. It didn't feel right. I had, like any woman, I liked when straight men, you know, admired me or something. And of course, they don't do that until you look like a woman, right? So part of going out, you know, and wearing the fishnets and the heels was getting the attention of men at times. And Lisa and I would, you know, go out and have fun, and we would, there's a certain group of men that like women like me, and that was a lot of fun at the time, so, like, exploring. At this point, I was able to tell Lisa, "Look, you know, I'd like to be with a man." And amazingly enough, she said, "Really? I'd like to see that." And so we would go out, and if we met somebody we liked, maybe we would bring them home. But, you know, not a lot, but sometimes. And it was exciting.
And at first, when I was trying to wrap my head around it, very much sexualized it. And so a lot of the dress up and the play was around our sexual interactions. And we sort of started playing a little bit with submission and domination. And she really craved, I guess, that submissive side. And then I had to take on the dominant side, which I wasn't real thrilled about. And it all kind of went through, it went through its own life of its own, that sexual being. So for like 10 years we played and had this really wild sexual life, not only with each other but with others, and it was okay, but at some point the game became very boring to me. It got really boring. I realized that being on top, being the dominant one, wasn't what it was made out to be, that there was a whole lot of submissives out there controlling from the bottom. And the role reversals were, it's like, you might be pretending I'm in charge, but really you are. And there was a real mind fuck going on there. And I slowly started to step away from the whole sexual games and just wanted to have normal sex. But I don't know that we'll ever have normal sex again. What's normal? That's even crazy for me to even say. But our sex life definitely was forever changed.
Lisa and I still make love, but it's different. For one, you know, I say it's formally known as my penis, isn't the same It doesn't. It doesn't perform the same as it used to. But we can still make love, and it's a little different. I think we make love like two girls would in some sense. It's not as I don't know how to explain this without being too graphic, but it's much more tender. It's much more about just being close and feeling each other versus some sort of rough penetration type thing. And you don't need a penis to make love to a girl, and and there's plenty of women out there that have no penises in their sex life. So it's just very different for us than it was. I think the first time in my life when I thought something was wrong was probably puberty, so 13. I could see girls in the neighborhood who were growing breasts, and I thought, where are mine? I'm not getting these. And my mother was in the theater. I had known gay people. I knew I wasn't gay. I was broken, that's all. I just didn't know what it was. You wake up and you go, gosh, what's wrong with me? This is wrong. I had a hole in my chest.
I think she was 16. She tells a story of her father taking her to a Pittsburgh Steelers game back in Pennsylvania. And when she excused herself from her father to go to the bathroom, she goes through this feminizing process so she can sneak into the girls' bathroom at the Pittsburgh Steelers game. And then her father later finds out and catches her because he can see her little bra sticking out of her jacket pocket. And, so there's these moments in life where she's struggling to be seen, even in these little 5-minute snippets as she runs to the bathroom.
That was actually something I remember very, very well. It was the first time I really cross-dressed in public, and we were going to the football game. My dad was going. I think my couple of uncles were going to the game, and I realized at that point that I might have an opportunity to, wear a bra underneath my shirt, and I had tucked it in my pants so you couldn't see it. But then at some point during the game, and I told my dad, I'm going to go to the bathroom, and gosh, I'm almost embarrassed. I found a bunch of napkins, and I quickly, worked this bra up and put it on and stuffed my shirt so I looked like some, young 13, 14-year-old girl. And I used the ladies' room. I felt that was where I was supposed to be, is in the ladies' room. And then, of course, you can't stay gone long, right? So I came out of the ladies' room and hid everything. And I tried to jam this bra back in my pants. And I guess the bra strap hung out, and I didn't know it. After the game, we're standing around with my uncles and my dad. And my dad looks over at me, and he grabs the bra strap and he just jams it in my pants without saying anything. He sort of just tucks it in, and I was so embarrassed. He didn't say anything. I think he didn't want to draw attention to it. Of course, the ride home was miserable. He asked me all sorts of questions. What are you doing? I didn't know what to tell him. I didn't have any answers. It was one of the first times where I felt really ashamed. I don't think I dressed again for a couple of years, probably.
So as Roxanne prepares to transition, she has to make these announcements at work. So she sends out, I think, 250 letters to her coworkers explaining her condition and what's going to happen and the name change. And so there was this huge buildup to this day when she was going to put on that business skirt, no longer the suit. There was this day where this was going to happen, and for me, that was the death and then the rebirth. That day when he was no more, and that she was going to be forever or 24/7 because up until that point where she went to school to work as Roxanne, she had one foot in the male world and another foot in the female world, and where she might put on a suit and go to work, come home and put on a skirt. You know, there was this sort of juggling going on, and so it was going to be permanent once she came out at work, and that was probably the hardest day for me. I think this is kind of an odd symbolism, but I have Beauty and the Beast, you know, Disney kind of porcelain collection. And on that day, I took a hammer to my beast because he was no more. And so my Beauty, she stands in there by herself. I keep thinking Roxanne will understand that symbology, and maybe she'll buy another Beauty to sit in there with my Beauty. But I had to crush the beast because he was gone. And that was probably the hardest, was knowing that Ralph wasn't coming back. It was going to be done. And so, you know, just said goodbye to him. But then all of this is silly because he's still there. You know, I could easily cry over losing him, but yet I know he's still there. So it's weird. It's a weird place to be in.
What challenges have you faced since Roxanne became your wife?
Initially, I think the biggest challenges were going out in public and what were people going to say about us and how were my children going to be treated at school, and boy, somewhere along the way, through a marvelous therapist, through some self-help reading, through just looking deep in me, I've sort of let go of what other people think of us, and I'm completely comfortable being out in public. But I have to say that was some of the hardest, is stepping out the door with now my wife, who yesterday was my husband, and fearing, literally fearing, how was the world going to accept us.
Social anxiety?
Oh, serious social anxiety, absolutely. I was terrified. I was in the fetal position at times. I had a really hard time with it, but again, with some therapy and self-talk, I sort of came to realize that I again, back to the control, I can't control what other people think. They're going to think what they're going to think, and I can't worry about what's in other people's heads, only what's going on with me. I've really learned to sort of take care of myself and accept other people, and that's really what it's come down to.
Do you feel you've lost your husband and gained a wife, or do you feel she's essentially him?
I've lost a husband. I definitely went through a period of mourning, and that was probably, well, that would be hard for anybody, right? And so there is definitely a mourning of that male husband sort of person that was in my life, but now I've got a best friend and a girlfriend that I can share absolutely everything with. The girlfriend I have now has all those memories and still laughs at the same jokes and still likes the same food and has the same memories. So even though I feel like I lost a husband, there's this feminine clone that brought all the memories and the jokes and all those things that you banter back and forth with as married couples, that didn't go away and didn't have to get reestablished. It was already pre-programmed in her.
How did Roxanne change once she became your wife?
I suppose in many ways she changed, and boy, estrogen is a really strong hormone, and I don't think I realized how strong it was until I watched not only the physiological and biological, physical changes that she went through, but personality changes. Whereas this accountant, then she's still an accountant that I was married to, would have sort of different perspective on shopping, whereas form over function, or what wasn't really interested in shopping for pretty things, can now happily spend the afternoon looking at pretty things. And I really think that's the hormones, or giving herself permission to appreciate the pretty. After she transitioned, I think she put her tools away for a while. She's always loved woodworking and working around the house, and we work in our backyard, and we've added on to the house. And so we're really physical sort of people, and I think for a while there, Roxanne did not want to do those things because they were perceived as masculine things to do. But gosh darn it, I need those planting beds built. And so she is back into her tools, and so now it's not a threat to her masculinity or femininity anymore. She just works with the wood, and it's okay.
Are you a lesbian?
No, I don't think so. And I know that's kind of a funny way to react to that. I appreciate a female body. When it comes to sexuality, I really like the male masculine. I really like a male body. No, I don't think I'm a lesbian.
Does Roxanne consider herself a lesbian?
Yes, definitely.
Do you consider yourself a lesbian?
I don't. I find labels don't help. I love Lisa to death. She's the woman I married, and yet I am a woman, and I think I'm attracted to men and male bodies. I'm not a lesbian, but she is. Or we laugh sometimes. We're two straight women trapped in a lesbian relationship.
But happily.
Happily, absolutely.
So you've had to accept a lot. Can you expound upon that?
I've had to accept Roxanne exactly for who she is, and really get that I don't have control over this person. They're going to live their life, and they need to live their life and be fulfilled based on their own terms. And I can either love them and be a part of it, or I can step away. What I've given up, probably the hardest is I've given up, are some relationships. Roxanne is coming out to the world. Kathy's having her 50th birthday, and she doesn't invite Roxanne. It was like, either I go to this party without my spouse and break her heart, or I don't go to my only family. At this point, my mother's passed away. Go to my only family's birthday. It was like being torn. Well, I chose to go to my sister's party, and it was the last time I saw him. Felt horrible that I chose to go, and I never talked to my sisters again about it. But for some reason, we just haven't been able to move past it. I feel in some way that I'm sort of protecting them from having to accept Roxanne. If they don't want to have to explain it, if they find it uncomfortable, then I don't want to put it in their face. So I have pulled back. To me, that's been my biggest loss, is my sisters. I don't involve my brother in that so much because he was always a little bit of a jerk to me. But my sisters were always there. I need a break.
Did you ever feel shame or embarrassed?
Oh, early on, absolutely. I'm sure that's what all the anxiety and anxiousness. I was embarrassed that my husband was going through this, that I was holding hands with a girl walking down the street, that, you know, I didn't want to embarrass the children. Absolutely. I went through lots of awkward, embarrassing sort of moments. The transition, you know, you don't wake up one day and look like a girl. So there was, just like when a young girl goes through puberty and there's that in between, that awkward moment, there were months, if not a year or so, of Roxanne being awkward to me. early on, Roxanne and I both belonged to a couple organizations here in the East Bay that supported transgender and cross-dressing families. And she would get dressed up to go out to one of her meetings. And it's like, are you serious? Are you going to wear that? And it was just, to me, I wouldn't be caught dead in a mini skirt and stilettos and whatever else she might have been wearing at the time. So I would laugh. And you know what? She learned to laugh with me. And so it took her years to find her style. And I think she is surprised that her feminine style has turned out to be more prairie skirts and tank tops than she initially thought it would be. I think she thought she was gonna get to spend her life in stilettos and minis. But we all know that's not very comfortable.
For me, it was important to pass in public. I wanted to be treated like who I was. And so I had to find a doctor, and that was just a whole other story of the medical aspect of this. Testosterone is powerful. Estrogen is very powerful. And so again, I thought I did the right thing. I went to my primary care physician and I said, I need hormones. I'm going to become a woman. And he said, no, I can't do it. I can't treat you. And he didn't have a reference. I don't think, that many doctors do this. And so I ended up, there's a clinic in San Francisco that treats transgendered people. And I went down there and they do great work, but they're an inner city clinic treating some of the most marginalized people in society. And my income was too high. And they said, look, you need to find a doctor that's not us. We're just not equipped to help you the way you can afford to be helped through this. So I eventually got a referral to a woman in San Jose, and so I showed up, made an appointment there, and I said, I need estrogen. I'm going to become a female. And she said, okay, but you got to get a letter first from a psychiatrist. There's this Harry Benjamin standard of care concept that was around. And so I had to go find a psychiatrist or a psychologist and spend time talking to her about why I needed to become a woman. And then eventually she wrote a letter. And when she wrote that letter, I could take the letter then to my doctor, who could then prescribe hormones. And I had started taking estrogen or testosterone blockers, but estrogen was something totally different.
How old were you at this point?
Oh, I must have been 42 years of age. Yeah, I think when I started taking estrogen. Someone who, like me, had not had gender surgery of any sort, I still had testosterone being produced in my body, and so you had to fight that. You have to shut that down with the blockers, and then you start on estrogen, which is amazing. I had these multi-layered dreams that were just many sort of threads of dreams, sort of all at the same time, and it wasn't an experience I had too much before. And I woke up the next morning and I had a song in my head, and it was like in a background music all of a sudden. It was like I was multitasking in my brain, and it happened so fast. It was, I've had a song in my head ever since. If you think of emotions as a deck of cards, I only played with clubs. And then after the estrogen kicked in and I became a woman, I had a full deck of cards. I had a lot more emotion. I could feel things deeper. I started crying at commercials. I felt like I had a lot more that I could experience in life that wasn't there before. At this point in my career, I was a manager and I had some responsibility. I had a good paying job, and I didn't want to lose that. And I knew I had to transition as well as I could. And part of that for me was trying to look as good as I could. And I feel a little differently about it now as I did back then. But gender to me is like a light switch. It's very binary for people. And if you have enough gender markers, you know, long hair, you're wearing makeup, you know, breasts, the clothes you wear, facial features, you know, there's many different things, your voice, you know, there's many different little gender markers. And what I realized is you could get people to flip enough switches that all of a sudden they would go, oh, that's a female. And that's all I was trying to do, is to pass as well as I could. I transitioned at work over the weekend, which was amazingly difficult. You know, came back on Monday as Roxanne, and that, you know, I hadn't done anything physically other than I was taking hormones at that point. My breasts were coming in. I realized that I still did not pass as well as I wanted to. And right after I quit that job, and I knew I would have to quit that job because not everybody can transition with you, I found a surgeon, and there was a gentleman in San Francisco that did facial reconstruction surgery, Dr. Osterhout. He told me my jaw was a little big, but I had a good angle here. But I had a a brow ridge up of my eyes that was very masculine, and my hairline was receding a little bit, and my eyes weren't quite like, you know, the shape, my eyebrows weren't shaped like this. So I went and had surgery. It was like 8-hour surgery, and he took my scalp off and my skin down. He gave me a nose job, reshaped my nose, and then he ground down like this bone on my forehead to make it more round, and he ended up having to reconstruct the bone on the front of my nasal passage and pieced it together with little magnesium wires and pieces of bone, and then pulled my hair down and stapled it all back together. And at that point I had implants put in too, because none of the women in my family had breasts, and when you start at 40 on hormones, you don't get much at all. And then, you know, it took me a while to recover from that, but afterwards, real quickly, I could notice the difference. It was much easier to pass in public. People see my face and they see a female face for the most part, and so life became easier for me. It's when people question your gender, they look at you funny, they judge you, they think you're weird. I was getting much less of that. My doctor asked me the other day, do I still feel gender dysphoria? And I'm like, no, I don't. I don't, you know, wake up wondering why I am who I am anymore. And I have healed myself first. I took care of myself, and this has allowed me to become a much better person, and to, I think, I can't even imagine it going any better, frankly. It's, you know, it's been fantastic. I probably would have felt better for a big part of my life if I could have figured this out when I was very young. I think puberty would have been a good time to stop testosterone from, you know, wreaking havoc on my body, and yet I wouldn't have had the life I have, and I don't have a whole lot of regrets in my life. I have a beautiful family and a wonderful wife, and I probably wouldn't have had that. And if I would have transitioned in the 70s, with the AIDS crisis and all that, I don't know. Would I even be here today? I'm not sure. I think in some ways life happens exactly the way it's supposed to happen. Or at least it happened this way for me, and I completely accept it.
Did my life change? I became a better version of me, that's for more accepting, more tolerant. You know, maybe if I had seen a guy dressed in a dress walking down the road, I might have laughed at them before. And now I feel compassion on what struggles they must go through. Or I just, across the board, I became a more compassionate, tolerant, accepting person, maybe even of myself. So it changed me for the better. I think I became a better parent, more aware of how my children were growing up, were they growing up to be tolerant and compassionate people? And turns out they are. I have marvelous children. They're very accepting. Even Jesse. Jesse's fabulous to this day. Even though he struggled early on, he really came around. And I think it has made us all better people.
I'm very lucky to have met the woman I met and fall in love with. And I still think that this story is her story, not mine. There's plenty of people like me in this world. There's not a lot of women like her who would stick by their wife going through all this.
Wanna grow before I die. Want to grow before I die. Wanna build me a farmhouse with my old man, where the grass grows high. I want to watch my children's children climb my apple trees, bounce them on my knees, sing them to sleep in the blue glow of night light. Bundle of living peace, and I wanna grow before I die. Want to grow before I die, and I don't wanna give it up on one hot summer night. I don't wanna give it up on red roses and red wine. I don't wanna shed my blood on a false sense of love. Want to grow before I die. Wanna fall in love at least 2 more times. Wanna be my best friends, as sweet as rhubarb pie. Put a little vanilla ice cream on the side. Wanna grow before I die. But we put